A worn-out gray Honda pulled up near the school gates. A young man stepped out and, after 2 tries, managed to close the door securely. He felt uncomfortable under the curious glances of other parents converging on the schoolyard. Many had a mixed expression of envy and contempt on their faces. They looked at the young father with smirks and disdain for his humble car. Even his daughter was teased at school because of it. The elderly woman who always brought her granddaughter to the same class as his daughter, Lucy, pursed her lips and pretended not to know him. She didn't even have a car. Igor knew that for sure, having often seen their carless family in the neighboring yard. Yet, they despised him for his cheap old car, which he had struggled to save money for. Despite the rust showing through in places, the non-working right front signal light, and other small issues, this car was essential for his job. He would never have been able to save enough for a new, fancy foreign car. This old workhorse, however, dutifully traveled the rough roads, enabling him to earn a living. Lucy wasn't bullied in class, though she was occasionally teased about her princess carriage. But she never had time to get upset, usually swatting the jokester on the head with a book. These lively discussions sometimes continued in the far corridor or the bushes behind the school. By now, her classmates had learned that mocking Lucy's dad's car was bad for their teeth, buttons, and behavior grades, so they silently accepted Igor's clunker. However, the parents allowed themselves disapproving mocking looks and snide remarks behind his back. But he couldn't fight them in the bushes like his daughter did with her bullies. Igor pretended it didn't bother him. He had plenty of other worries in life. A year ago, Lucy had gained a little sister. Now, Marina was mostly occupied with the younger daughter, a sick child who needed constant maternal care. Igor had to work for 2 while his wife was on maternity leave. The number of mouths to feed had increased, and sarcastic remarks about his car were the least of his daily concerns. The bell rang, cheerful kids spilled out of the school doors, some waving backpacks, some pushing each other, all making noise and searching for their waiting parents. Olga Yurova came out onto the porch and scanned the schoolyard with an eagle eye. Some parents quickly collected their children and hurried away, while others approached the teacher to ask about their mischievous kids. Igor didn't crave a chat with Olga Yurova, knowing well what she would say. Lucy fidgets and doesn't listen in class. Lucy is disorganized, sloppy, and got into a fight with 2 boys today, though that's fewer than usual. The teacher was clearly aiming for Igor, accelerating towards him. Where was Lucy? If only they could leave without hearing about her behavior. Igor braced himself to apologize when suddenly a bright figure in a turquoise coat appeared in front of Olga Yurova, blocking her path. A blonde woman sprang in front of the teacher, shielding Igor. He was stunned, unable to react as these 2 women met like billiard balls, only without a clatter or rebound. Olga Yurova was as surprised as Igor by this brazen interruption. Hello, Olga Yurova. I'm the mother of Nick, your new student. How was his first day? Everything all right? The voice of the turquoise coat was pleasant and confident. Actually, I wanted to talk with you, and the father of another student here, she continued. The teacher still aimed for Igor. Your Lucy caused trouble again today. She started a fight with boys from another class, and our new student got hurt. Why do you blame the children for your shortcomings? Nick's mother interrupted. If the kids fought, it's because you couldn't create a friendly class environment. And why are you blaming a girl? Where's my Nick? What happened? Igor straightened his shoulders, feeling unexpected support from this new lady. He had been ready to apologize, but she defended his daughter and even told the teacher what all the parents had long wanted to say but didn't dare, fearing it would worsen their child's situation. Can you explain what happened? The persistent lady insisted. Olga Yurova hesitated, unprepared for this turn of events. She clearly hadn't expected to be blamed for everything. Parents usually lowered their heads, apologized, and promised to influence their children. Dear viewers, more than 90% watch my content without subscribing. If you still have not subscribed, then I ask you to do so for me. This is the best motivation to continue. This lady questioned almost the entire teaching process, and these thoughts were evident on the teacher's stunned face. An awkward silence was broken by the appearance of a peculiar pair in the school doorway. A tall, blonde boy limped along, led by Lucy, the terror of the seas and local fighters. Both were disheveled and tousled, reminiscent of the plucked but undefeated rooster from the Bremont Town musicians. The boy looked guilty while Lucy walked proudly, as if she had won an Olympic gold medal, probably in weightlifting, since she was carrying 2 large school backpacks with one hand. The children and parents fell silent, staring at the colorful pair as they slowly approached the teacher, their parents visible behind her. The boy was clearly embarrassed, but Lucy was used to these public reprimands. After 3 years, here are your heroes. Deal with them yourselves. The teacher waved them off and hurried away. The culprits approached slowly. Nick's mother took her son's backpack from Lucy. Igor, finally realizing what was happening, hurriedly grabbed both backpacks. The parents clearly didn't plan to argue in front of the whole school. This group headed for the school gate. By the old, worn-out Honda stood a bright blue car, gleaming with newness next to its rusty neighbor. The color made it easy to guess who owned this charming piece of foreign engineering. Igor had noticed the blue eyes of the new boy's mother and her son earlier. His jacket was the same turquoise blue. Yes, this was their car. It beeped and flashed its lights, deactivating the alarm. The woman took her backpack from Igor and unexpectedly extended her hand. "Nah, and this is my son, Nick," she introduced herself simply and calmly, seemingly unaware of Igor's embarrassed look due to Lucy's behavior and his old car that many laughed at. "Sorry about Lucy. She often gets into fights. It's unfortunate that your son was involved," Igor said. "Dad, we didn't fight. I fought with other boys, and Nick defended me," Igor added. Only now did the parents notice that Lucy was still supporting Nick by his elbow, though it was no longer necessary. They looked quite peaceful together, with no signs of conflict between them. "All right, we'll discuss this at home," Igor said, using his usual phrase. Unsure how to react in such an unusual situation, he added, "No need to discuss anything. It's clear Lucy was being bullied, and Nick stood up for her. He's always been our champion for justice." Nas smiled. Igor felt warmth and comfort from her smile, something he hadn't experienced in a long time. At school, Olga Yurova constantly scolded him for Lucy's behavior. At work, he gave 200% to earn extra bonuses and premiums, sparking envy and displeasure among his lazier colleagues. And at home, no one greeted him with a smile anymore. He couldn't even remember the last time that happened. 10 years ago, Marina had been his brother's girlfriend. Igor had only admired her from a distance, envying his brother. She was beautiful, always caught his eye, but then his brother was hit by a car, and Marina tearfully announced she was pregnant with his child. The family decided the baby should grow up with its family, not fatherless. Igor married Marina, but she never loved him, neither before nor after Lucy was born. She only demanded that he provide for them, earn money, feed, and clothe them. He diligently took care of the pregnant Marina, then the young mother with the baby. And when Lucy grew up, nothing changed. Marina was always dissatisfied, waiting for him at home with complaints that he didn't earn enough, that something was broken at home, and he never had time to fix it. She accused him of wandering around while she was stuck at home, unable to even go to the movies because of their financial situation. All these years, she constantly complained about how miserable she was, how everyone else had perfect families, and she was stuck with such a worthless husband. Igor had long forgotten the beautiful, alluring brunette with red lipstick who once excited his imagination. His dreams of her had faded. Real family life with Marina was far from what he had imagined, just reproaches and domestic arguments, constant financial struggles. No matter how much Igor earned or brought home, it was never enough. He always felt poor, even though he made more than his colleagues. They also had families and children, but they could afford good clothes, decent cars, and vacations. All these years, only Lucy had been his solace. He loved his niece and raised her like his own daughter, but he had never felt so warm and light-hearted. It was just a smile from a stranger, but it felt special, as if it warmed him with her smile. She even stood up for him and Lucy in front of the teacher. Igor suddenly realized he was still looking into her eyes, smiling foolishly and holding her hand, which he had extended during their introduction. He hadn't let go, and he hadn't even noticed. She didn't pull her hand back. Continuing to smile and look him straight in the eyes, she was so beautiful and elegant, so refined and radiant in the halo of her golden hair. Finally, it dawned on Igor that he had been holding her hand for too long, and he hurriedly apologized and opened the door of her little car, still smiling. She placed the school backpack on the seat and began to help her limping son settle in. Igor, bustling, tried to help while Lucy hovered around. She continued to smile and sincerely thanked him for his help. Nikita waved goodbye to them, and the blue car drove off. "Cool, right?" asked Lucy. "Yeah," Igor answered dreamily, not sure if the question was about the car or its owner. "So, tell me, what was the fight about this time?" Igor asked Lucy as they drove home. Lucy frowned and said, "They called us poppers." "Okay, but how did that boy get involved in the fight?" "I don't know. I didn't notice. They just hit him hard on the leg. He'll probably have a big bruise." "And who is this new boy? Did you meet him afterward?" "Of course," Lucy replied. "We gave them a good beating. He's okay, even though he does music. He seems to be an excellent student." "That's what Olga Yurova said. He and his mom moved here, so he was transferred to our school." "Where did they move from?" Igor inquired. "I didn't ask," Lucy said. "The lesson started well. What happened in class? What did you get today?" "Nothing special," Igor responded. "I got a good mark for my math homework from last time, and there's a note in the diary about the fight." Lucy concluded her day sadly. She knew her mother would scold her again, scold her father for raising her poorly. Her little sister would be cranky and cry, and her mother would take out her frustration on her father. Of course, Lucy might get scolded for the fight, too. She sighed heavily. The car pulled into the yard and parked in its usual spot opposite the entrance. Lucy reluctantly got out of the car and slowly pulled out her school backpack. She really didn't want to go home. Her father wasn't in a hurry either. He checked something, rearranged things in the trunk, walked around, and looked at the wheels. When there were no more reasons to delay, they trudged to the entrance. They were already expected at home. "How long are you going to mess around with the car like lazy flies? How long do I have to wait for you? The trash is not taken out. There are plenty of chores at home, and they are out there walking around, idling instead of a greeting." Igor received a smelly trash bin at the doorstep. He turned around and trudged back outside. Lucy slipped into her room to put away her school books in the crib. Her little sister was fussing discontentedly while Lucy was fair-haired and gray-eyed, like Igor. The baby was a spitting image of their mother. She had the same black eyes, thick eyebrows and eyelashes, and curly black hair. She even had her mother's voice, loud and perpetually displeased. She always had colic, gas, or teething issues. She was either hungry or wanted to sleep, or the opposite, wanted to play. There was always her discontented whining, crying, and screaming in the apartment. Other babies smiled, laughed, and tried to say their first incoherent words, but this child never smiled, even in photos. She was always frowning, ready to cry at any moment, despite the family's and the children's photographers' efforts. At first, Lucy was happy about her sister, and Igor was excited too. But each day, that joy faded. The baby and the mother were alike, not only in appearance and voice, but also in the atmosphere they created at home. It was an atmosphere no one wanted to return to after work or school. Other classmates rushed home, even with bad grades in their diaries. But Lucy didn't hurry, even with good grades. She knew her mother would never praise her, but always find a reason to scold her. Igor returned with the empty trash bin and, not waiting for the next assignment, immediately declared, "The left rear tail light of the car isn't working. I need to go to the workshop urgently while it's still light out." "What do you mean, to the workshop? Can't you drive without that tail light?" Marina asked. "The front one doesn't work either, and you drive like that." "I turn on the headlights at the front, but there are no headlights at the back. If the rear tail light doesn't work, they'll fine me so much that my veiler won't cover it." Igor tried to explain the urgent need for repair. "Oh, just give a bribe, and that's it." "What? Traffic cops don't take bribes anymore." Marina didn't let up. "How much will the repair cost?" "How do you not understand? It's not about beauty or fines. I'm just not visible on the road. Other drivers can't see the car without those lights. We'll just crash, and that's it." Marina wasn't about to give in. She was clearly unhappy with the unexpected repair expense, and that her husband planned to leave the house. Dear viewers, I ask you to subscribe to the channel under this video. I will be very grateful to you. Who will help Lucy with her homework for tomorrow? Igor paused for a moment, standing in the corridor deep in thought. Lucy suddenly peeked out into the corridor and intervened in the adults' conversation. I can go with Dad and do my homework in the car while they're fixing it. I won't get in the way, and we'll finish everything. She was already putting on her jacket, her school backpack at her feet. Marina didn't have time to argue. She just opened her mouth in indignation, inhaled to start another tirade, when a sharp child's cry came from the room, Irina's demanding scream. Not waiting for her mother's response, Lucy slipped out onto the stairs. Igor turned and hurried after her. They quickly left the yard. Igor was in a hurry to reach the garage while it was still light, and he could drive without tail lights. The men took a long time tinkering with the car. Sometimes using colorful language and specific terms, they didn't pay attention to Lucy, who was calmly writing something in her notebooks on her lap. It was even easier for her to solve problems here than at home. The men cursed mildly and continued to fiddle with wires and parts. They weren't swearing at her, just out of habit. Igor went somewhere and returned with store-bought buns and packets of instant coffee and cocoa. There was an old electric kettle and a couple of slightly chipped mugs in the garage. Though they looked unprepossessing, they were clearly often disinfected with vodka, and those buns with scalding cocoa were delicious. Igor also enjoyed joining in, mixing himself a packet of coffee. They hadn't eaten at home, and it was getting late when they returned home in the dark. Marina had put Irina to bed and was sleeping with her. Igor quietly went to the kitchen to find something to feed Lucy. Pots and pans were empty, and there was nothing ready in the fridge. Instead of dinner, they could quietly slice some sausage with bread and make tea. It was good. He had fed his daughter buns in the garage. No one had cooked dinner for them, and making it himself was out of the question, as it would wake the baby in the morning. Igor, as usual, fried cheese toast for breakfast. Marina woke up and stretched as Lucy and Igor stood at the door. She asked what he had made for breakfast, cheese toast again, and frowned. There was no time to explain. They might be late for school. Approaching their usual spot, they saw that the little blue car was there again, just like yesterday. So, Na had already brought Nikita. Igor suddenly remembered yesterday's meeting and unexpectedly began to smile. Even Lucy skipped to school. Na was already returning to her car. How's Nikita after yesterday? How's his leg? Not limping, she asked. Nothing serious, Igor replied. The main thing is his head and hands are fine. He's got a big bruise on his leg, but it'll pass. What childhood is without bruises, right? Na smiled warmly and sincerely. And how are you? And Lucy, she got hurt yesterday too. Na genuinely cared about the girl. She didn't even know her yesterday morning. Yes, everything's fine. We spent the whole evening in the garage, repairing the car. She helped me and even managed to do her homework there, Igor said, unexpectedly confiding in her about yesterday's adventures and the breakdown of his humble car. He didn't admit that he thought about her all evening and lay in bed for a long time at night, seeing her blue eyes, golden hair, and gentle smile before him. Even at night, he dreamed of a figure in a turquoise coat. In the morning, he woke up unusually cheerful and energetic. He hurried to take Lucy to school, wondering if he would see Na again. Have a great day. See you after school. Na smiled at him as she left for work. Igor also had to hurry. He had a long trip planned today and might even be late to pick up Lucy after school. On such days, she usually sat near the duty officer in the school lobby or did her homework on the windowsill, not wanting to sit at home under her mother's scolding. The car wouldn't start. The ignition didn't work at all. That meant the problem wasn't with the battery. He opened the hood and tried to fix something but quickly admitted to himself that professional help was needed. He called the same garage guys and described the situation. In 20 minutes, they were towing his car to the garage for repairs. They needed to go to the auto market for parts. Ivanovich drove Igor home in an old Ziguli to get money. He went up to his floor and quietly opened the door. The stairwell was quiet, which meant Marina and the baby might be resting. When Irina wasn't asleep, her cries and screams could be heard from the first floor. The apartment was indeed quiet, but then he realized it wasn't entirely so. The door to the room was ajar, and through the gap, he heard a man's voice. Dear viewers, this is the second part of today's story. For those who have not yet watched the first part, I recommend watching it from the beginning and then returning to this video, so you can fully immerse yourself in the story of our main character. I will leave a link to the first part in the description under this video. Enjoy watching. In the apartment, it was indeed quiet, but then he realized it wasn't completely so. The door to the room was ajar, and through the gap, he heard a man's voice. Still out of habit, not wanting to wake the sleeping child, Igor took 2 steps towards the door. The voices became clearer. The woman's voice sounded like his wife, Marina, if not for the cheerful intonations and carefree, playful laughter. Where are you rushing? He's out today and won't be back soon. We have the whole day ahead of us. I'll fry some potatoes with mushrooms for you. He bought some good mushrooms and ham the day before yesterday. How does he still suspect nothing? But you're a gem, by the way. His payday is in 2 days. Will you throw in some cash for me? I'll then put it into our bank account as usual. We already have a decent amount saved up. Did you see last month's statement? Oh, we could have taken more, but then there'd be nothing left to eat, and his car is always breaking down. A rusty piece of junk. All the money goes to fuel and repairs. And yesterday, too, he spent the whole evening somewhere, supposedly fixing something in it. Forget him. Come to me while Irina is asleep. She's such a darling, just like me. How does your husband's horns even fit through the door? The last phrase was drowned out by the hearty laughter of both. Igor couldn't take it anymore and stepped forward, opening the door. He saw Marina on their bed in a sheer red negligee. She was embracing and shielding a man, but his hairy hands were confidently caressing her body. Her back was lowering down and lifting the negligee. He clearly planned to remove it from her. Not waiting for his wife to be completely undressed, Igor asked, "Is Leia also his?" Marina jerked from the surprise, jumped on the bed, and stared at him with made-up eyes. He looked at her painted face, with the bright lipstick, the eyes accentuated with shadows and eyeliner. She had never once in her life made up for him. He had never seen this negligee on her. It had always been in a separate small closet in the hallway. Marina composed herself, realizing that Igor might have heard much of their conversation. Making a cold face, she got up from the bed and went for the robe hanging on the chair. The strange man began to climb out from under the blanket and pull on his pants. Igor looked at them calmly and detachedly. Marina couldn't withstand his intense gaze and the heavy silence. "I don't know who your Leia is, for I had just started seeing your brother then, and you married me because of this pregnancy. So you got what you wanted, and I don't care who Lucia's father is." How to explain to his daughter that her mother had left with another man? Igor thought he knew that the older girl, Leia, was not his child. 10 years ago, Marina had been seeing his brother, and when he tragically died, she came to the family claiming she was pregnant by him. Dear viewers, more than 90% watch my content without subscribing. If you still have not subscribed, then I ask you to do so for me. This is the best motivation to continue. She expected the boy's relatives to support her and the child in the late stages of her pregnancy. She agreed to marry his brother, thus Igor became the official father of his niece. After these thoughts flashed through Igor's mind, he returned to reality. By then, the man was almost dressed. He was silent, and there was not much to say. Marina stood in the middle of the bedroom, not knowing what to do next. From her husband's gaze, she understood that her role as a wife was over, and she seemed to be tired of it all herself. He only irritated her, as did Lucia. Igor delivered his verdict. "Take your child and leave. We'll officially split the children in court. Irina goes to you, and Leia stays with me. You can keep the money from the account, and I won't report the fraud to the police for now. But if you start causing trouble, I'll get paternity tests for both daughters, so don't count on alimony. The same goes for the parental apartment. Any questions?" Marina silently took out a large bag and began to pack her clothes from the wardrobe. Bright blouses and dresses, colorful clothes Igor had never seen her wear, flashed before him. Indeed, he mostly saw her in the evenings after his hard work, in house robes, always tired and irritated. These outfits were clearly not for his eyes. How blind he had been. The man silently approached the crib and picked up the little girl. She woke up and reached out to him. She clearly knew and had seen him before. After dressing the child and packing their bags, they left the apartment. Marina threw the keys on the floor in the hallway and slammed the door. Igor took a deep breath, for the first time feeling a sense of freedom, as if he had been released from a cage where he had been held for years. He sat on a chair, staring blankly at the floor, going over everything he had heard in his mind again and again. He wondered if he had done everything right, if there was another way. He didn't feel much sorrow for letting the younger girl go with her mother. Marina was always fussing with the eternally fussy Irina, rarely letting him hold her. Yes, Igor hadn't insisted much. To be honest, he was always exhausted from work and had to take care of the older Lua. Though Marina hadn't worked since her first pregnancy, she barely paid attention to her older daughter. Igor now realized that she had almost no maternal love for her first child. She had used Lua to force him and his parents to support her. Now he saw it clearly, but Igor loved Lua. He had been deeply affected by his brother's death and had adopted the newborn. He had grown attached to her and loved her as his own daughter. It was right for Lucia to stay with him. She would be worse off with her mother. Igor looked around the apartment, feeling empty, more spacious, quieter now. No one would meet him with scandals, constant discontent, and reproaches. But how to tell Lucia that her mother wouldn't be living with them anymore? How would the child take it? God, he needed to pick her up from school soon. The car, he had completely forgotten about Ivanovich, who was waiting for him outside with the money for the parts. Igor quickly went to the sideboard, but the money was gone. Marina had taken it while packing, and he hadn't even noticed. Igor went to Ivanovich. He got into the car, and the man silently awaited an explanation. There's no money, and my wife is gone too. I caught them with her lover and kicked them out. Igor calmly and slowly stated the fact, staring straight ahead. Ivanovich confirmed sympathetically, starting his old Julie. They drove to the workshop, where the men were already disgruntled from waiting. They could have finished by now, Ivanovich told Igor, who was advised to stay in the car while he went to talk to the men. Soon, he returned and started the Julie. We chipped in. We'll buy the parts now, and you can pay us back when you can. Do you have money for food? Thanks, I get paid in a couple of days. I'll pay everything back then. And Lucia, will she stay with you? Ivanovich asked sympathetically. Igor was a regular client, understandable with such a car. Not a car, but a rusty wreck. Lua often came with her father, sitting in the back seat doing homework while the men worked on the car. At first, they were surprised, thinking the child could be left at home, but then they got used to it. They also noticed that Igor and Lua never had dinner at home. It was strange knowing there was an unemployed wife on maternity leave at home with the younger daughter, while the older one spent all day at school and aftercare, and even in the evening didn't rush home. Was it better to write on a portfolio on her lap than at a desk at home? Were store-bought buns tastier than homemade dinner? The men only silently and understandingly glanced at the girl in the back seat when Igor went to the store. They brought water and turned on the old electric kettle, which became a tradition. They themselves suggested he use their cups, rinse them, and brew tea or coffee for his daughter and himself, not to choke on dry food. Lua is at school, Igor frowned. When do you pick her up? I'll take you to school. We'll manage the parts ourselves. Where should I take you? Ivanovich spoke calmly and matter-of-factly, trying not to show in his voice how sorry he felt for the downtrodden guy. Indeed, Igor's presence wasn't necessary in the workshop. Driving him to the school gates, Ivanovich firmly shoved some crumpled bills into his hand. Here, hold on until payday, and then you'll pay me back. I'll call you when the car is ready, maybe this evening, maybe tomorrow, as it goes. Ivanovich deliberately switched the conversation to the repair. He saw that the guy's eyes were becoming misty with tears. Yes, he was unlucky, but it was clear from the start that there was no family happiness there. Maybe now he'll have a chance to get his life in order. Igor stood in his usual spot, only his car was missing. There was still half an hour before the bell. He wasn't in a hurry. He was just gathering his thoughts. How would he tell Lucia? How to talk to a child? Probably, he should wait until they got home. Or was it better here? Or should he pick her up and have a conversation at the workshop? No, that would be even worse. When he picked her up, she glanced anxiously at him. Dad was on foot. No car. How did he get here? He took her hand and led her home silently, looking at the sidewalk, lost in thought. Leia, Mom left us. She left with Irina. I'll be living with you now, alone. We will get by somehow. Leia also didn't react immediately. She just squeezed his hand tighter and followed him obediently. Then she asked, almost inaudibly, Mom took Irina? Igor, still looking down, only nodded in response. He was afraid to see how Leia would react. The child remained silent all the way home. In the entryway, the void was striking. Leia went into her room without looking around. Igor knew she wouldn't talk to him soon. She didn't go into the kitchen where he was making tea, and she didn't come to the table to eat. Igor silently took her usual portion and poured milk into a mug, brought it to the room, placed it on the table, and left quietly, closing the door. He knew she would eat. She wouldn't starve herself in protest. He understood that it was better to let her come to terms with it after all. He had just become the closest person to her. Days and nights passed in a blur. Igor didn't have time to come to his senses. He only noticed that he needed to change habits, new duties, and problems with Lucia's school and chores around the house piled up. His mother promised to help him out after her vacation, but for now, he had to rely only on himself. He got used to cooking, washing, and cleaning. The car broke down less often as they had replaced most of the necessary parts with new ones. There were enough funds for now, but he had to be more careful with spending. Gradually, everything settled down. Lucia gradually opened up to him, sharing her thoughts, fears, and dreams. Igor did his best to listen and support her. He knew they had a long way to go, but together they would manage. When the car was ready, Ivanovich brought it back almost new. Igor felt a sense of relief, knowing they could finally move on. He started looking for a better job, hoping to provide a more stable future for Lua. Every evening, they sat together, talking about their day, sharing stories, and laughing. Slowly, the void that Marina left was filled with new memories and a stronger bond between father and daughter. Life was challenging, but Igor and Lucia faced it together. Their resilience and love for each other gave them the strength to rebuild and create a new, happier life. And as they moved forward, they knew they would always have each other to lean on.